Hey there, Indigo Ocean here, and I'm happy to have you joining me for this third in the series of Miraculous stories. I'm not sure how many I'll do. I've written a book that each chapter is a different story and then little exercises of things for you to do in your life to try to bring out in your own life the basic, kind of the basic life lesson of whatever was in that particular story. But I haven't had that book published. I have a couple of books that have been published, but that just doesn't happen to be one of them. And I'm kind of waiting on it. So there are a certain number of stories in the book, but I'm not sure I'm going to tell all of those stories here. There are like 20 stories in the book, and I doubt I'll tell all of them. But, we'll see how far this goes. If you guys keep showing up, then I'll keep showing up also, and I'll keep, sharing these stories with you. So this is one of my favorites. They're all my favorites for different reasons, actually. But this one, it answers so much of what was a problem for my family when I was growing up, which is that my family was just, really poor. I mean, we weren't so poor. Like, there are people who are more poor. Well, definitely around the world, there are a lot of people who are more poor. But even in America, there are people who are more poor than my family was. But we were poor enough that we didn't always have food to eat, so that's pretty poor. Like, when there's actual physical suffering involved, yeah, we were pretty poor. We could get like the Toys for Tots kind of stuff and all that stuff. So as I grew up, there was a really big issue in my family around money. And there was a really big issue in me around the idea of, could I have it or couldn't I? Did I deserve it? Had I done enough? Had I worked enough? There were all these things swirling around my entire childhood and well into my adult life. That was just this real contrast. It was just this real contradiction around the idea of what is one's relationship to money? How does it work? And, can we have it? Do we get to have it? And what do we need to do to have it? And do we really have to sell our souls? Do we really have to be not good people or extractive and exploitive in order to not suffer the lack of money? So when this story came about, it was like this was truly the turning point for me on this particular issue of coming into right relationship with abundance and coming into right relationship with money. And it came about completely unexpectedly. So like I said, in what I wrote there, I answered a job ad that was for only $19 per hour. Now, what had happened is I had actually been living in Maui in Hawaii, and I had moved to California, which some other time I'll tell you that story. It's a whole story in and of itself, like how that happened, because I had no intention of leaving Shangri-La. Okay, I thought I lived in the most perfect place on the planet and had no intention of leaving, but I wound up coming here. And originally the idea was that I was going to come here for just a few months and check it out and see if I could find a job and a place to live and all of that. And then if I did, then I would go back to Maui, pack up my house and car and everything and really move here. So I'm landing here in California, the Bay Area, and I did have a temporary place to live. So I needed to also find a job, but I wanted it to be a temp job because for all I knew, I wasn't staying in California. I was going back to Maui in just a few months. So I was looking on Craigslist and I was just looking for temp jobs. And I came across, like I said, a job that the ad was for $19 per hour. Now, I'd been making, I think I was making something like $25 per hour. I'm seeing that people are kind of coming in and out, so I'm thinking I've got a bad connection. I hope that this is recording and that you guys could actually catch up with me. If not, I might have to actually record this whole thing over again. Oh, Facebook. Anyhow, hopefully some of you will be able to pop on and stay on. Put in the comments if you're having trouble with the broadcast. Put it in the comments, and if I have to start the broadcast over again, I will. If you guys keep getting kicked off or something like that, okay? So anyway, getting back to the story. So I answered the job ad, and remember, if you guys listened to the first story in the series that I did about when I had moved to New York and I was looking for work there and everything, and I remember I told you that the sister who walked me out to the elevator after the interview told me that I should ask for more money, that no matter how much money they offered me, that human resources always lowballed, and that I should ask for more money before I accepted the job. And I did it. I did what she said, and it's true. I got more money. It was already a job for more money than I'd ever made at that time, and I got another 10% on top of what they had offered me before I took the job. So the thing is, after having that experience, I never took another job without talking it up. And sometimes I would get as much as a 20% raise. And guess what? Nobody ever said no. Nobody ever said no. Now, nobody ever gave me the first amount that I asked for either. Like when they would say this, I would say this, right? And I would always get somewhere in between. But it was always more than what they had originally offered. And not only that, but I really feel like they valued me more, because now that they were giving me more money, they were really paying attention to make sure they got their money's worth. So they would notice how good I was, right? They would notice how I was exceeding their original expectations for the position. And so it really super served me. So in this job also, even though it was just a temp job, at this time, I didn't even wait for them to make the offer. I'm not suggesting that you do this, by the way, but this is just what happened. So I didn't even wait for them to make me the offer. While I was still at the interview, I talked them up from $19 per hour to $23 per hour. So then I started the job, and I did a really good job. You know, I really blew everybody's socks off, and they gave me all kinds of perks. Like they gave me health insurance, sick leave, and vacation leave, even though I was temp. They gave me a car. They didn't give me the car, but they rented a car for me. They paid for the rental of a car for me, because they didn't want me to go back to Maui, and they wanted me to just stay there longer. And my car was on Maui, and so they got me a car. I can't even remember all the things, like just so many things. They let me name my own position. It's like crazy, right? But then at a certain, okay, so two key things happened. One thing they did is they sent me out for, what was it? They sent me out for this training in this one technology, and it resulted in my getting certification in this business technology. And at that time, it was fairly rare to know it at all, let alone have certification in it. The certifications had only even just been created. And then over that next period of a few months, that happened when I'd been there about 4 months. And then over that next little period of time, I think, so I wanted more money. So the other thing that I learned from that experience with the other one was I never stopped asking for more money. Like once I would get a job, I would keep, not only would I talk them up before I would take it, but I would keep asking for more money. Like every 6 months, I would always ask for more money, and I would always get it. And if ever anybody would say no, I would just leave the company. And so that was like how I lived for like a decade, right, of the jobs. And so then I did that, and I got another title that I wanted. And so I became a business analyst, and I got up to $30 per hour. So this is within a period of just like 6 months. I answered the ad for $19 per hour, and then then they sent me for training, and I became more valuable to them. And then I got them up to $30 per hour, right? So that's already 6 months to go to almost double from 19 an hour to 30 an hour is like an extra $11 per hour within just 6 months, right? Well, it wasn't good enough. So then what was the next thing? So then because I had just gotten that certification, when they gave me the $30 per hour, it became, hey, Mello, hey, Anissa, good to see you there. It became clear at that point that I wasn't going to get any more. The human resource person who had been there when I first came in was not the same human resource person who was there. She had left, and someone else had come in. Yeah, it's good to see you. And the new person didn't really like me. Like the first person loved me, and I could get whatever I asked for. And the new person did not like me at all. I think she resented how much her predecessor had given me. I think that's what it is. So she just came in like on paper. She was like, who the hell is she? So just like right off the bat, before I ever even met her, she didn't seem to really like me very much. Oh, good. Thank you for doing that. I always appreciate it when people invite people to come on over and join. Thank you for that. So I was not getting above $30 per hour. Now, some might say to go from $19 per hour to $30 per hour in just 6 months, like Indigo, settle in. But no, Once I realized that this woman did not like me and that I had hit the ceiling on where I was going to go in that company, I was like, I got to get out of here. So I started looking again on Craigslist. This was some years back. This was over a decade ago. So it was about a decade ago, almost exactly. And so that was the thing back then. Now things have moved more towards like Facebook and some other things. But back then, Craigslist was, where you went, oh, hey, Ursula, good to see you. Oh, hello, Taya. Tell me if I'm saying your name right. I'm pronouncing it Latea, but I don't really know. Oh, good. Oh, cool. You guys. Oh, excellent. Thank you for letting me know that. Okay. So then I said, let me find something better, like where I won't have this, where I can keep going. Right. And I answered this ad where the certification that this first company had paid $5,000 for me to get, plus paid me my salary while I was full time for a week going through the training. He paid for all of that. Right. And so just a few months later, this other company was saying that they needed people who knew any one of these technologies. And that one was one. And so I contacted them and they were like, okay, nobody knows this other business technology that our company specializes in. But if you know one of these, we can teach you. Like those ones are harder than this one. So if you know that, we can teach you this. And then they also liked that I had a master's in counseling. Yeah, I know. Wow, I was right. So they hired me. So get this, they hired me for $60 per hour. I went from $30 per hour to $60 per hour in just like 1 week. Can you imagine? Oh my God. Little bit of a tangent here. So remember, I'm telling you, the new HR person does not like me. She really doesn't like me. So when I told her, like within weeks of them upping me to $30 per hour, which I had to fight for so much, I'm telling them, oh, I'm leaving because I'm taking a job for $60 per hour. Oh my God. I know I could almost taste in my mouth the throw up that was in her. I'm sure it made her sick to her stomach. I probably shouldn't take so much joy in that, but I do. So anyway, so I gave notice and she tried to extract from me, like she tried to manipulate me and guilt me into staying on longer. I was like, I gave you 2 weeks notice, lady. Like, you should be lucky for the 2 weeks because I'm actually really seriously ready to walk out the door today. An extra 2 weeks, I'm going to make $30 per hour instead of $60 per hour. Like, feel grateful. And then I was actually doing this special project using the technology that they had sent me to learn for one of the department heads. And I was saying, look, before I go, I'm going to try to get this completion for you. And he was being grateful. And she was like, no, you need to stay longer until it's totally done. And I'm like, no, I mean, like, this is how long I'm staying. And I'm going to try to get it done within that time. So work with me. And she's like, no, you have to stay. I'm like, I don't think you're understanding. I've quit. Every minute I'm here is a favor to you. He got it. And he was like, yeah, thank you. Thank you for helping me with this. Because nobody else in the company knew how to do it because I was the one that was sent for the training. Anyhow, so then I went on to the new business where I got to work from home for $60 per hour. Yeah, first time in my life that I got to work from home, which, you may not know, I'm a serious introvert. In fact, to be perfectly honest, I even have a little bit of an anxiety disorder. I know it doesn't come across on video because I'm at home and I'm totally comfortable. But if you see me in person, you can probably tell I have, especially if it's a long time, it's hard for me to be around a lot of people for a long period of time because I'm so intuitive, which helps me channel. It makes me a really good channel. But it also means I get worn down after just a few hours. So if day after day, I'm basically doing 11 hours between the commute, the 8-hour day and the 1-hour lunch hour, it by the end of a 5-day straight week, I'm wiped, right? Yeah, you work from home too. Yeah. So having the opportunity to make that kind of money and be able to work from home. Like, do you see how this was? I don't know if any of you were here at the very beginning when I was talking about the false teachings I had from childhood around money, but this was totally upending my world. Like, this was not only not having to sacrifice to get money and not having to exploit or anything to get money. It was like I was just being thrown blessings. It was like I just had to keep saying yes to have more money, right? It just kept getting better. It's like they say in Abraham Hicks, the better it gets, the better it gets. And I was in that groove of the better it gets, the better it gets. You're an empath. Okay, so you know what? Oh, okay. So we know. So I'm among kindred right now. So you know what a big deal that is to be able to stay in a situation that's building up your energy and not have to spend a lot of time in situations that are draining your energy. So it was just like a win across the board, but still not enough. Still not enough. So then I saw some other consulting agencies that were even bigger consulting agencies. And I got hired by a few. So I was like mixing my hours between 3 different ones. And then at a certain point, after about a year of this, and you know, the other really good thing is these were business consulting firms. So even though they brought me in because I knew that particular technology, they taught me the business of business. And I had tried my hand at businesses before that. I just was never successful. I was always making less than what my living expenses were. So I couldn't sustain it long enough for the business to really get going. And I just didn't really know what I was doing. You know, I was just winging it. And finally, I was brought in by these business consulting firms, and they taught me how businesses succeed. And then they gave me clients that were other businesses and said, okay, go make them succeed. And they put me with a more experienced consultant to help kind of guide me until the point where I became the senior consultant. And through that, believe it or not, it turns out there's actually a body of knowledge for business. And there is actually a set thing of why some businesses succeed and others don't. And it's learning business is a little bit like learning how to read. You can probably figure out how to read on your own, but it's a heck of a lot easier if you got a reading teacher. And so I finally had a reading teacher. I finally had a teacher of just sound business, you know? And so then within a couple of years, one of those companies asked me to go exclusive, and they increased my hourly to $75 per hour. And still always working from home, mostly seeing clients even online, occasionally having to go to their offices, but very rarely, never had to get on a plane. So $75 per hour. Now this is within 2 years of answering that ad for $19 per hour. So this is already, it's a ridiculous salary increase, right? But what happened next? Okay, so I won't say not good enough, because the reality was I was extremely happy. My commitment to the company I went exclusive with was only to work 20 hours per week. I got paid $6,000 a month just for a commitment of 20 hours per week. But even if they only had 10 hours per week of work for me to do, I still got my $6,000 per month. And if I worked a single hour above the 20 hours per week, I got paid $70 per hour for every one of those hours. So I couldn't ever make below 6,000, even if I didn't work 20 hours. And anything I worked above 20 was just gravy, right? It was these deals I would get, right? Because I knew to ask for them from the time that sister told me to, and I did it and it worked. I knew from that point on, and I wasn't hesitant, right? I was in confidence because I'd had that experience, and we learn, faith is really most easily built by experience, to tell you the truth, right? So anyway, so I got them to that deal, and within just a few months, this was 2008, and guess what happened in 2008? You guys remember 2008? Whoosh! The economy dropped in 2008, right? And it was still dropping in 2009. And so this was the end of 2008. And then so beginning 2009, Christy, honey, you're going to have to go back and catch the beginning. There's a whole lot of story before this. But right at this point, I'm at 75 per hour, right? So I've gone from 19 to 75 at this point. So the economy dropped, and I don't remember, I'd already just gone exclusive, so I didn't have any of the other consulting firms. So this particular one was based in North Carolina and Texas. And again, I'm in California. And the Western region manager quit when the economy dropped because he wanted to go to a bigger company to have more security. So when that happened, the company based in the South decided they were going to just pull out of the West completely, and they were going to consolidate their business in the Southeast. And I was like, no, you know what? I can do what he used to do and what I've been doing. I can do both. Let me take over his position. I'll be your Western regional manager. I can close deals. Like, 'cause all he was doing, he would sell the deal, then he would give me the contract and say, do this. And I would do everything else. And then back east, they would do the billing. That's it. I did everything except sell it and the billing. And so I said, I can sell it and you guys keep doing the billing. Right? And they were like, no, you can't do it. Those were their exact words. You can't do it. And I was like, I can do it. I know I can do it. And they just didn't believe it. And so, okay, so unwound that, right? And it was like, okay, they're leaving. Now, at the time, I had borrowed their computer. I was using one of their laptops, and there was something else, like all their software. I didn't have any software. I also didn't have my own laptop because when I went exclusive with them, they gave me all this stuff, right? So when the deal, when that relationship was ending, it was like, well, how am I going to do anything? I need to get all this stuff. And I had been falling into debt before I came to California when I lived in Maui. And so with the security of this deal, I had just paid off tens of thousands of dollars of debt. I think I paid off almost about $40,000 I had just paid off. So by the time, because I was thinking I'm on the gravy train, right? So let me just pay all that off so that it costs me less, because now that I can see I'm obviously going to repay it all, the sooner the better, instead of paying like 20%, 25% interest, right? So I paid it all off. Oh, hey, Don, good to see you. And then the bottom drops out from under me. At the time, I think I had 1 or 2 months living expenses. So I didn't feel like I had the money to go out and buy a computer and buy all the software that I needed to do the consulting work. It's like, okay, living expenses, job tools. I have money for one and the other. So this is what I did. First, I signed up at a local community college where each unit, I think, was like $60, and you had to have 2 units to be part-time. And if you could be part-time, you would get a student ID. And if you got a student ID, you could get a computer and software as a student, right? So I paid $120 to sign up for those 2 courses, which I never actually went to. Got a student ID. I went to a couple sessions, but... And then I got the student ID. I went online. I signed up for the programs, got a computer for like $600. Like, this was a really nice high Dell XP. And I got that for $600. And then I signed up with Linda, which gives you 30 days free, right? And it teaches you how to use all this different software. So I had 30 days to learn. And then I got the Adobe, the $6,000 worth of Adobe software. I also got, students get the shit for like 10%. So I got it for $600, so that was $1,200, and I had a month to make it work. So from Linda, I learned how to make a website. I learned how to make a logo. I made my own logo. If you go to aspiritech.net, which is the company I made then, you will see that logo is still that logo that I made figuring out Adobe using lynda.com. I made that thing. It's still the logo. And so then it's like, okay, now I've got a website to make me look like a company, right? But I still don't have any clients. And so because the company was leaving California, I could go to the clients without it being a conflict of interest. And I just said, look, the company is leaving. They've been paying me $75 per hour. You've been paying them $200 per hour for every hour that I work. Why do you say we split the difference and meet right in the middle? 2 of them said yes. And those were the only 2 I needed, because then I had enough road that I could build up the business. Within 2 or 3 months after that, I got my first $20,000 client off the website, just off this website I'd made, off the instruction from lynda.com. And within, maybe it was another 2 years after that, I closed my first deal. That was a $500,000 deal, for which I kept $375,000 of it, and I wasn't the one doing the work. I think on the entire project over an entire year, I did 40 hours of work. I probably did about 40 hours on that project. I had a number of projects going, so I was working probably 15, 20 hours a week. I had a number. I had $50,000 here, $50,000 here. But the $500,000 one was the one that bought my house. It's really the one that made me a millionaire, because I was able to leverage that kind of money into all kinds of things. Like it's still rippling through my life. I know, it's crazy, right? So that's why I say it was $1,000 per hour, because I realized at one point I was sitting on the beach in Kauai. I finally took a vacation. In my whole life, I can count on one hand the number of vacations I've taken in my entire life. You know, I lived most of my life as a workaholic. And so I'm sitting on the beach in Kauai, feeling like I can finally breathe. I can finally take a vacation because I'm making like $40,000 a month and up. And I'm sitting on the beach, and I sat there maybe about an hour. And then finally I thought, that feeling of, I need to get up and do something productive that I'd lived my whole life with, it came on me again. And then I stopped and I said, holy shit. While I have been sitting here on this beach, I have made $1,000 for the hours that my people are working on these projects. That is how I went from $19 per hour to $1,000 per hour within, all told, it was about 3.5 years. Life, the spirit-led life. That's really what it was. Like if someone had come to me when I was leaving Maui and said, okay, so this is what your next 3.5 years are going to be like 3.5, 4 years from now, you're going to be a millionaire. Meanwhile, I was falling into debt by hundreds of dollars per month. I was falling more deeply into debt. I was, those things where they send you in the mail this thing like, take this $4,000 loan at 28% interest. And if you can pay it back within 6 months, it'll be no interest. I was saying yes to those because that was the only way that I could pay my rent. I thought I was living in Shangri-La. I'll tell you that story some other time. But I was really seriously falling deeply into debt. And within less than 4 years, I was a millionaire. I couldn't have seen it coming, and you can't plan this stuff. And this is one of the things that gets people so stuck because they try to plan their path to the million. Could I possibly have planned this? So if I had been trying to make if I had been trying to make $1 million that whole way, I never would have. I would have made so many wrong turns because at no point in that road could you see the million. At no point, even the last point, that last little, I couldn't have seen it even then. There was at no point I could have seen it. And so if I had tried to manipulate the situation into being that, I would have never hit it. And I want to go back to how I started this story as that poor little girl who didn't have enough food to eat and who couldn't get anything for Christmas, ever. No birthday celebrations, nothing, okay? There was 1 year in my entire childhood that I had a birthday party. It makes me sad to say this. I just realized that, wow. I thought that didn't bother me anymore, but I guess it still does. But there was 1 year in my childhood that I had a birthday party and got presents. And that was the year my little sister was born because they didn't want me to feel, neglected now that, they didn't want me to feel replaced. So they had a little party for me. But, my childhood was one of extreme lack. And I internalized a lot of it. I was a kid who would get so sick drinking milk because I felt guilty that my mother would have to replace anything I drank. I'm sorry. I took it on, and I tried to save the family, but I was just a little kid, and I learned from that money was suffering, and that I didn't deserve it, and that I just needed to work harder. That was the only way it was going to come. And so I lived so long just working harder and working 7 days a week. And a lot came to me from doing that. I got to go to really great schools, that is a part of that pathway. But I was still suffering. I was still hungry. I was still not always having enough food to eat. Yeah, thank you, Nicole. I appreciate that. Yeah. So it was still this real challenge, even after I did all the things that this world says, if you do this, the money will come. But it didn't come. I did all the things and I did them well, but the money didn't come. And then finally, when I let it go and I just started being spirit-led and I just started just saying yes, but always going, you notice in this story, I kept reaching for more. I kept saying yes to what would come to me, but I also kept reaching just for the next step and then the next step and the next step. I didn't try to aim there. I just, from wherever I was, and this is very consistent, if those of you who know the law of attraction, they always say, just from wherever you are, just reach for the better feeling thought. Don't try to get from despair all the way to elation or whatever. Just try to go from where you are to where you can genuinely get to next. And I swear, so many of us are really held back by the fact that we overreach. It's like, okay, I want to do this thing. Okay, now I want to do it like at the level of being famous. It's like, well, wait a minute. That's too big a leap. Just get so that you're doing it, get so that you're doing it at all, right? And then just one step after a time. And if you're meant to get there, you will get there. It will conspire. All of life will conspire to get you there if you're meant to get there. And if you're not meant to get there, no matter any amount of effort, you're just going to break yourself against the rocks, right? So that's what I had to learn from this experience. And I hope that you can learn that from this experience. Like, I hope that you can kind of get yourself in sync with the abundance that's trying to come to you, and that you may need to let go of some of the false teachings that you've been raised with to get there. Yeah, I don't know Eric Thomas, actually. I don't know that name, but I definitely wanted it really badly. It was, yeah, for myself and for my family. One step at a time, exactly. One step at a time. And I had to be satisfied with each step long enough to get into it, but not so satisfied that I just said, okay, now I'm done. I was never done. Actually, the one time I thought I was done, the ground fell out from under me. But what I discovered even then is when the ground falls out from under you, you either fall or you start flapping your wings and you fly. And I flapped my wings. And that was the one time I really did need to dig in and pedal to the metal on it. That was the one time I really did need to work nonstop. That month I had 30 days of lynda.com. I had 30 days to make it work, right? But I knew that I would. I knew that I was blessed. I knew that and I don't say I knew it up here, because how I'm telling you this story, I hadn't pieced together all these dots yet. I was just living it, right? I pieced it together many years later. But at that time, do you know, like, sometimes you just can feel it? Like, sometimes you just know something's coming for you. You don't know how, you don't know why, but you can there's a certainty in you. And that's how I felt. I knew when I said, I can do this for you, I can replace him, I can run your business, and they said, you can't, I knew they were wrong. And then I knew that I could do it for myself just as well as I could do it for them. I knew it. And how I would do it, those ideas to sign up for those courses so that I wasn't planning all that. I was being led step by step. First, I was led to sign up for the course. Then I found out I could get a student ID. Then I found out I could use a student ID for this. It wasn't scheming. It was being given and being spirit-led and obeying. It was given. I received it. I acted on it with faith, and I was allowing spirit to bless me over and over. And I was just like living it in a really accelerated way for 4 years. And that's how it took me so far in such a short period of time. Yes, I knew it in my heart. Exactly. All right. I'm going to peace out now. Thank you so much for joining me. So it does look like this is a better time. So let's just plan, Thursdays at 5:00. I'll do these. And like I said, I don't know if I'll go through the whole book, and this is an unpublished book that I'm sharing stories from. Being Spirit-Led, exactly. My working title for that book is actually Spirit-Led Stories. I'm not sure if I know what my first step is. I'm trying to distinguish ego from my higher self. I want what I want so bad, but maybe I want it too bad. I don't know. Okay, before I peace out, let me just speak to that, because I think that is something that happens. There's so many things in what you said that I think happen for a lot of people. Magic, stop barking. I think that distinguishing what you're receiving that's coming from your higher self versus what's coming from your conditioning is something that you can only get better at by daring to act on it and seeing what comes. There's just no substitute for that. You just learn. There is a difference in how it feels, but it's how it feels in you. So nobody else can explain it to you. You've got to learn your feedback system of how spirit is communicating in your system. there's some work that I do with people around this, like if I can be in person, if I can have them in my energy field so that I can connect my energy field to theirs and I can kind of feel into it and I can kind of take them through a process. I can do it a little bit, but the reality is it's something that the best way to learn it is by acting on what is coming. You know, if you did the 21-day manifestation challenge, you know, that last practice is going for a walk without a destination and getting to each corner and asking, do I go right, left, or forward? And not going anywhere until you get an answer. And then whatever the answer is, do it and just go block by block like that. I would say, you know, that would be a good practice to do. Again, I don't know if you did the challenge, but hopefully you did. But that would be a good practice to do more, because it just is consolidating what is usually a more longitudinal experience of life. And it just helps you to learn what it feels like when fear, which is what ego is communicating with, when fear is communicating with you, and that's the feeling of I must, and the excitement is actually the excitement of warding something off, versus when spirit's communicating with you and the excitement is the excitement of unfolding. It's the excitement of expansion. How does it feel different in you? Only your experience can tell you that. And so you got to make some right turns and some wrong turns in order to learn that. But once you know that you're getting your feedback system, you're on it. It's only a matter of time then. And if you can also love the journey, enjoy the journey, don't resent the journey of having to learn that, see that as actually getting to learn that as one of the blessings of your life. If you can greet it that way, it'll be all gravy for you. I tell you that. Yeah. And then the last part of what you said is, you know, what am I doing wrong? Most often, the thing that people are doing wrong when they're not manifesting what they want, you know, there are a few different things, but probably the thing that I see most often is that overreaching, that inability to ever be not satisfied as in I've stopped, but satisfied as in I can savor, I can allow now, I can actually allow. So many of us, and I don't know if, you know, I'm sure that there's a diversity in the experience of our people, right? So I know not all of you come from super poor families, but most of us have had, if not in our immediate family, somewhere within our family, we know what it's like to lack, right? To physically lack. And so there's a little bit of conditioning we get that we have to overcome, that we have to take the reins, or this is just not going to work out. Everything's going to fall apart if we aren't in control enough. And so manifestation, there's so much of it. It's about clarity of intention and mental focus, but then in how you live, it's actually about allowing. It's about letting go of those reins and letting spirit do in this very conscious, deliberate way. Like, you're not just a victim, right? You're not helpless or hopeless. Excuse me, I have this. You're not helpless, right? But you're still inviting spirit to do for you. And so it's in a way that you're turning it over. And some people will say this, they'll say, you know, I'm turning it over to God, right? I'm turning it over to spirit. I'm turning it over to the divine. It's like that. You have to learn how do you don't turn it over to the point that you fall apart. You still keep your responsibility for your mental focus. This is key. That will always be your responsibility, to focus more on what you want than you focus on just what you're observing. You can't just keep focusing on what has already been created and expect to create something different. That's number one. You have to take responsibility for focusing yourself on where you want to go, not where you just happen to be. If I'd stayed focused on where I was as a kid, I'd still be living with bars on the windows and people shooting the cops in the cars out in the street. Because that's where I was. That's what I was observing, right? If I stayed focused on that, I would have kept creating it. I had to focus on a vision that was only in my mind until I could get to the point where now I experienced it. Now I can observe it. And now the trick is that now that I can observe it, I still have to be focused. I can't put myself in a situation where only that kind of contrast, only that kind of external suffering makes me focus. I don't want it to make me focus. So I have to take responsibility for focusing just as strongly, even when what I'm observing is incredibly pleasant. That's another really key thing. I hope you got that, because that's a big one. Okay. Yeah. So those are the main thing. Getting that balance of learning, just testing out, being able to sort out what your feedback system really is with spirit, and then being able to exact your mental focus and being really deliberate while at the same time knowing how to let go and allow it to come to you. You created it with your focus, but now you got to know how to let it in, right? And we're not good at that. We're really not good at that. Okay. But I'm going to keep trying to share stuff with you that makes you better and better at it. I probably share more of that stuff in other places than on this page in terms of like the how. Like I really share more of the how in the POC Manifesting Destiny group, and even more in the Destiny, like super, super intensely in the Destiny Accelerator group. And so that's more like the how, but I'll always keep trying to help you move along with this because so much of it's experiential. I can't just explain it to you, but I can hopefully guide you through experiences that teach it to you, and stories, where you can see from my experience. Okay. Thanks again, everybody, for being with me. And I am going to peace out now, and I'll see you next Thursday at 5 Pacific, 8 Eastern. Okay. Bye-bye.